Victor DriveX 12. Let's take a look at Zheng Jiwei's current racket after he retired, got signed by Victor, and swapped from the Saber 11 Pro. So it has been a while since I have reviewed Victor, and you guys know historically I hate free core, but given that my favorite badminton player at the moment switched to this racket, right? I had to give it a chance. I had to try it. I had to see what's going on. So, as you guys know, I know virtually nothing about Victor besides free core. So don't ask me about, the metallic carbon fiber, the pyrofill, the nano aerogel. I don't know, and honestly could care less what it does. But you will get out of this review my thoughts, as always, and honest feedback about it. So let's start from, I guess, the specs, or what I can glean from using it. So this feels even balanced, which would make sense considering it's from the DriveX line. I have heard the DriveX 10 was slightly head heavy, but this feels like a pure even balanced racket. This is quite repulsive, with a little bit of dampening. So if I had to compare it to something, probably something like the Flareon 700, right? Which felt very solid, yet damp. So think like Nano Flare plus Halbertech, right? Back to that analogy from CKU. Similar kind of experience here, where you do have the repulsion, you do have the speed, but you are also getting a kind of muted or dampened feel that I have found very, I guess, typical with other Victor rackets I have tried in the past. In terms of like maneuverability, obviously it's going to be very easy and very quick. In terms of stiffness in the shaft, there is a marking here, and there's like, the camera's not going to pick it up, I don't think, but there's like stiff, and there's a dot, and there's a flexible on the other side. And this says this is one dot away from being maxed out stiff, which I don't really agree with. This feels very like medium stiff to me. Kind of like Saber 11 Pro or Saber 7 Pro. Sorry, Saber 7 Pro. And that kind of like medium stiff stiffness, for lack of a better word. So let's start, as I always do, in the front court and move our way back. So in the front court, when it comes to soft touches, I don't like. No. One thing I've noticed, because I use this extensively, I think this was my only racket for this week, so it was a solid 8 or maybe 10 hours of play, and this is the only racket I use. I noticed that the racket was fine when it came to shots that had pace. So for example, if the opponent gives me a drive or a smash, it performs as normal as any other racket would, right? You can redirect it, it's more about the skill based than the racket itself. But what I noticed is that my tight net game suffered a lot. It felt like if they played something that had very little velocity or very little power, nothing for me to feed off of, because of the free core or the dampening in the aerogel or the pyrofill or whatever, I could not like guesstimate or feel the shuttle, right? Because when the shuttle spins, you kind of have to like finesse it over, right? It's all touch at that point. The thing is, when the shuttle has that little power to it, it's like I could not feel anything when I was trying to spin it back, right? So that was huge downside for me, because that meant basically anytime someone played a decent spinning net, I'm just lifting, right? I'm not even going to try to combat it, especially if it's a close game. Excuse me, I have a bit of the sniffles today for some reason. So that was a downside. When it came to like rapid succession of like front court fast shots, I also felt not my best. And I don't think it's because of the shaft lag, because this is relatively stiff. I don't think that was the issue. Again, I think it's just a lack of sensation, because I don't want to keep blaming free core, because this racket in particular feels more muted than what I remember other I was about to say Braves, other Victor rackets that I've tried in the past. But it honestly could just be the free core itself. But I felt that when it came to rapid succession shots, my consistency and quality dramatically fell off after like the first 3 shots. And I think it's because, again, I couldn't really get the timing down. Because again, I'm adjusting to the lack of feel. Whether it's just the free core or whether it's the other aspects of this racket, I don't know. But when it came to just like 1 or 2 shots, this played just like the Flareon or the 1000Z, right? Very easy for me to generate repulsion with, very easy for me to put the shuttle down, especially when, you know, I have enough time for my proper swings, right? In the front court, right? Mid-court, obviously, is where this is going to shine. I think that doesn't come with no surprise. In the name, it's in the name, DriveX, right? Very repulsive, nice control. This feels like a NanoFlare 700 in that regards. Very easy, very nimble, and also, I will add an asterisk, it does feel like the NanoFlare 700, but a touch stiffer, and of course, you have the muted sensation, whether it's the free core or whether it's whatever else is in the racket. So, A+ there. You know, blocks are fine. The hard drives, you know, suffers a little. Again, that's probably a me thing, you know, being used to Yonex and leaning and 100 more so than the muted feeling that Victor has. I would assume, given more time in the Victor ecosystem, or if I had or was forced to use this, I would assume my power generation in like the thumbs and the fingers would come back as well. But during my testing period of this week, I felt it was a little bit behind. When it came to, I guess, placement, you know, drives right into the corners or like lifts, those suffered in accuracy and quality a little bit. Closer to the end of this review period, or my 10 hours of playing with it, it did get a little better. The line placement for the drives was definitely there, but lifts that I swore were in, when I looked back at the footage, they were very clearly out. So that was something to take note of. In the backcourt, so smashes took some getting used to. So I said this in my first look on my TikTok, because I'll be posting this both on TikTok and YouTube. That's why I'm referring to it as my TikTok. What was the word before? I said during my first look that I felt like I wanted to use more of a hammer grip with this racket in particular, because it felt like the flex was weird. And I say this often, and it's very hard to articulate because like Racket's flex is so unique and individual to each racket. So I'll try, give me a second to try and think about it, because I'm recording this on the spot. You know, I'm sick, but I want to get this out, so give me a second. So I think the best analogy I have is 100's Nitrix Venom has a very distinct whip, okay? Very much like a flexier version of the Astrox 100ZZ, and that it has like a great whip from the solid core, great feedback, and you really do feel the whip even with like a half power smash. This kind of felt like the whip was the same, but it was a bit more slow and controlled. So kind of like, yeah, I want to keep, the first thing that comes to mind is like NF700 again. Like NF700s, NF700 Pro, sorry. That kind of shaft flex, because, you know, again, the NF700 has the servo filter, right? So it has a similar muted feel in the head, and that kind of translates to how the shaft flex as well, at least for me, when it comes to hitting feel. So it has that kind of similar flex, but once you get over the different, let's call it that, different sensation than compared to my main racket, the 1000Z, it sounds nice. Granted, it is going to be a little bit muted compared to other rackets. Still using Expo 65, you know, 2628, but relatively easy to generate power. This racket It's definitely not the hardest hitting racket. You can definitely generate some power with it, and the power is quite easy to generate with, but I felt I was missing the stiffer shaft from the 1000Z, which is, you know, a common thing you see in a lot of my reviews. So I don't really ding that against this racket, because some people prefer an easier powered racket. So what does that leave us with? We talked about the front court, we talked about the midcourt, we talked about the back court. We talked about the cons in the front court. Cons in the midcourt, let's go there. I think the only con, or only thing I disliked about this in the midcourt was it's really hard for me to kind of push power out of it, especially if I'm in a compromised situation. So what I mean is, like, for example, if I'm in the back and I smash, and then the opponent drive defenses back at me, right? My instinct, or usually my normal attack plan, is to just keep driving, because in the 1000Z I can usually win the battle there. But in this case, and this happened to me like last night, I'll try to find the clip. If I don't, I'll just explain it. I was smashing, you know, they lifted, I smashed, the defense came back at me as a drive. I drove, and like there was no pressure. Like, he just gave it back to me, and I was like, fuck this. And so I just lifted it. But yeah, in that case, I felt very insecure. Another area where I feel lacking is really soft blocks, or, like, you know, redirection. So for example, service return situation, partner serves, they play a drive. If I try to play a cross drive, right, play it away from the front player that just received the serve, I have to be very careful about it. It's definitely doable, and I did do it, but I felt like my stroke and my fingers had to be a bit more intentional than compared to like the 1000Z, where I can be a little bit more reactive, if that's the case, right? If I'm expecting one shot and then suddenly they play a drive at me, with the 1000Z I'm able to just play cross anyways, like, you know, with reflexes, and I can just rely on the repulsion that comes with that frame. But with the Victor DriveX 12, even though this is a repulsive racket, there is still that I want to even say, like, almost shuttle hold aspect of this racket, where you have to be just a little bit more intentional with your midcourt below the net shots. Okay. Is there anything else in the midcourt that I really noticed? No. Okay. In the backcourt, my biggest issue with this in the backcourt was line placement. When it came to power generation, like I said before, very easy. But when it came, especially during training, when I'm like trying to pin the line for accuracy in practice, it was just not happening. Very inconsistent, and I 100% attribute that to the lack of sensation. Again, yes, I hate free core, but I'm getting used to it. But it's still just, it's the elephant in the room. Like, I don't want to skip ahead, but I feel like this is like a decent racket from Victor. But yeah, when it came to accuracy drills, when it drops, when trying to like put, 10 shots in a bucket, or trying to pin the lines on the smash, all over the place, right? Sometimes it's in, sometimes it's out. So obviously sometimes it's on the line as well, but not as consistent as, something by Yonex or something by 100, where I have a bit more vibration, a bit more feel. But I think that's pretty standard. I don't think that's the fault of this racket in particular. I think that's just a flaw with free core in general. So yeah, besides, the free core hate, there is a lot to like about this racket, actually. I think if, someone forced me to use a Victor racket, it would be this one. I think it has enough good for me to overlook free core. It's definitely the archetype of rackets that I like, right? Fast, maneuverable, nimble, agile. Definitely a speed type racket, right? It has enough stiffness in the shaft to give me, power and control and, some feel. You can compensate for the lack of control in the front court. Probably I'd up my tension 1 pound maybe. Try to get more sensation from the strings itself. And training could kind of help compensate for, the lack of placement in the backcourt. Is there anything else I want to say? Yeah, I do. I was quite surprised with this racket, not gonna lie. Curiosity brought me to this racket, because why did Zheng Shiwei switch, obviously, and I can totally see why. This definitely plays a lot like the Arc Saber 11 Pro, except for the lack of a control assist bumper, and of course the addition of the free core handle. But outside of that, very aerodynamic, very smooth swinging, very maneuverable, easy to generate power, right? Just a solid overall racket, right? I love even balance rackets, as I think some of y'all know, right? No downsides. I think this is a fantastic racket. I think if you like Victor, if you like that comfy feeling that free core does give you, which, I'll admit, when you're playing casually, the free core handle is nice. If you are like a prosumer, I think, like someone that likes to spend money on really nice rackets but plays pretty casually, I think this is a great racket for that, right? This kind of reminds me a lot of kind of how the NF700 Pro, both the 4U and the 5U variants, kind of fall in that similar segment of being nice and high end, but still very usable for the intermediate player. I think this is just a touch harder to use because of that stiffer shaft, and because a lot of people are used to the vibrations in Yonex and leaning, so that there's a little bit of a learning curve to get adjusted to that. But if you get adjusted to it, I think fantastic racket. And that is honestly the best review I have ever given a Victor racket, besides the original Brave Sword 12. But that's from another generation. So let me know what you guys think. Have you tried this racket? Do you like it? Do you not? Let me know what your thoughts are about this racket in the comments below. In terms of other Victor rackets, I want to try the Phantom, kind of, but I'm not really looking for it. This just happened to be a friend of a friend's. I was able to use it, so shout out to you. You know who you are. He wishes to stay anonymous, so I'll give him that. Next up on the review list is a 99 Pro Gen 3. Yes. So that just came in, again, from a friend who also wishes to stay anonymous. But they will ship that over to me later today. So today is September 13, right? Saturday. And we will string that, because my girlfriend now strings rackets. So again, shout out to Santi. Love you. And also you can message us if you want us to string your rackets if you're in the Philippines. But yeah, that will be coming up next. And yeah, as always, thank you for watching. Show some love, like, share, follow, blah, blah, blah. Bye-bye.